you for attending today. I've been asked to present on 3 topics of interest to the Construction Summit. I'm going to take you through how ISO Solutions is good business practice, provides optimal management of resources and limits the impacts on the environment from a sustainability perspective. I'm also going to bring you through the challenges and benefits of integrating ISO management systems, if any of you have ISO management systems in place in your own organisations. And then I'm also going to bring you through the transition to the ISO 2015 and how you can actually implement the new changes and the timeframes to do so. So, ISO in the construction industry. So, the ISO stands for International Organisation of Standardisation. ISO has been around since 1947, and they're responsible for over 20,000 standards that have been introduced worldwide in the world today. There's over 108 specific ISO building and civil engineering construction standards that a lot of architects, designers, engineers would be very much familiar with and apply to their day-to-day work practices. So the International Organisation of Standardisation harmonise our activities throughout the world, and the need for ISO in the construction industry stems from the fact that 50% of our population has increased since 1950, and this population has resided in urban areas requiring a lot of building, construction and infrastructure. And because of globalisation and internationalisation of trade, ISO standards have been in bigger demand because of all the globalisation. So ISO standards is very much prevalent in the construction industry, and it's very much a large requirement of the procurement industry as well. A lot of procurement tenders would look for ISO standards for engineers, mechanical, electrical contractors and construction companies to prove that they would be competent in health and safety, environmental and health and safety. And now sustainability is becoming much more widespread. It's very much in vogue at the moment, and you're going to be looking and ask for environmental product declarations and also environmental performance of the buildings that you are responsible for designing, and then also for the construction. Oops. So ISO standards specifically for the construction industry are very much, ISO standards allow the ISO construction industry to be efficient and effective. It also allows the ISO and the construction industry to solve problems and provide solutions along the construction development processes. And ISO standards also provide a lot of information to construction industry stakeholders, so enable them to compete on a global level. So you would have got a lot of advice today in terms of legal and tax requirements. Equally, ISO standards are applicable to over 178 countries and provide guidelines and rules across the globe that everybody must follow. So the specific ISO standard or committee that's responsible for the construction industry ISO standards is a technical committee called TC59, Buildings and Civil Engineering Works. This technical committee has been around since 1947, not its members since 1947. The input from its members include architects, engineers, designs, product manufacturers, stakeholders and other interested parties. So these technical committees are tasked with the objective of defining the organisation of information in the process of design, manufacture and construction. They're also responsible for defining what the general geometric requirements for buildings, building elements and also components are, and they're also tasked with specifying what the general rules and guidelines for addressing the economic, the environmental and the social impacts, which is sustainability, and aspects related to sustainable development. So these are the core requirements of the technical committee, and they're active with all the national institutes. And you probably hear a lot of the National Standards Authority of Ireland asking people to participate in any of these technical committees where you're a technical expert. So ISO standards also address vital and topical issues such as sustainability, accessibility and service life. So sustainability has been in vogue since 1992. It came to the political agenda to the Rio de Janeiro conference back in 1992. So they identified that more sustainability development had to be applied on a global level. So ISO standards recognise what's current and topical around the world. So sustainable construction, exactly what does that mean? Sustainable construction aims to meet the present day needs for housing, working environments and infrastructure without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs in times to come. So a classic example of a sustainable construction would have been the London Olympic Games, and that was where they would have applied a lot of sustainability practices, and all of the buildings had to have use after the Olympic Games, and that's a very good example of sustainability, where there has to be a functional to the building, and there has to be flexibility in the use of that building thereafter for the specific function of the original content and design, concept and design of that building. So sustainability is very much on the agenda of a lot of planners as well, and you'll see that now in Ireland, where you have a lot of planners rejecting buildings on the basis that it mightn't be sustainable or add any value from economical, environmental or a social improvement policy. So sustainable construction, these are the kind of guidelines that the sustainable construction ideas and principles matters. So when you're considering sustainable construction, you have to look at the design and the management of buildings, you have to look at the materials performance of the components going into the building, you'd have to look at the construction technology and processes, you'd have to look at the energy and resource efficiency in building, and a lot of you would know that there's a lot of grants available from the SEAI in terms of energy efficiency and the insulation of your buildings, therefore energy savings. You look at the operation and maintenance of building, you look at the robust products and technologies of buildings and infrastructure, and also flexibility in building use, function and change, and the dissemination of knowledge in relation to academic, technical and social contents. And that's just a summary of some of the criteria from sustainable construction. The specific standard that addresses the requirements for sustainable construction is actually ISO 15392, and that was published in 2008, and it's been recently reviewed in 2014, and this is based on the concept of sustainable development. Sustainability has three pillars. It addresses economical benefits, environmental benefits and then social, and it applies to all buildings and other construction works from their inception to the end of life. So life cycle analysis is now very much in vogue and requested by a lot of the engineers, and also for product manufacturers and from a large group of suppliers looking at the environmental efficiency of the products going into their buildings. So life cycle is very much important and very much in situ for the last 5 years. Here's a sample of ISO management systems that are quite popular in Ireland at the moment. You have ISO 9001, which is a quality management system. That would also be asked in a lot of government tenders by the Irish government. You have ISO 14001 environmental management system, which would be a pillar of the sustainability development standard. You have OSAS 18001 health and safety, soon to be ISO 45001. We have ISO 20121, which is event sustainability management systems. For example, Croke Park would have certification in ISO 20121, which means that all the events that are ran from Croke Park are ran in a sustainable manner. You have ISO 27001, which is information security management systems. You also have ISO 50001 energy management system, which relates to sustainability, energy conservation and resource conservation. And you also have ISO 22000. So the two standards there that are applicable to sustainability are ISO 14001 and ISO 50001, and then you have the specific one for ISO 20121, which is how to run an event in a sustainable manner. The challenges of integrating these ISO management systems for an organisation is the fact that there might be lack of knowledge or competency by the personnel trying to implement the integrated solution. An integrated management system can be defined as an interrelation of all of the processes where 70% are common. So a lot of staff wouldn't have that competency of that requirement and understanding of the whole three facets of ISO standards from a quality, environmental and a health and safety perspective. The standards are not equally ranked in terms of importance. Typically, health and safety is of utmost utmost importance to a lot of organisations, and that would get priority with quality secondary and then environmental. Some organisations put quality first and health and safety secondary. So we have to make sure that the vested interests are there. So for example, if you had a silo of quality, a silo of environmental and a silo of health and safety in its own right, who's going to take over the integration of the three together? Then 20% of the requirements are not compatible with each other, so that's a negative with regard to integrating the system. There's also a failure to gain senior management support to the integration of the standards, and there's also adverse organisational culture to change. So they're the main barriers when you're integrating ISO standards into an organisation. The benefits of an organisation implementing an integrated quality, environmental and health and safety management system is that it reduces documentation and processes. It also reduces implementation and maintenance costs. It increases your profitability due to the risk management processes and the SWOT analysis that you would be doing on your business. And if functions are successfully defined and documented and there's full accountability in your organisations, it's possible to rationalise roles and responsibilities and give everyone clear guidance. And then development of common aims and objectives will simplify aligning these with the strategic objectives of your business. So they're the pros and cons of an integrated solution. As you can see, the benefits outweigh the negative impacts of the integration of an integrated management solution. So the third element of my presentation today is in regard to the new standards. So every 7 to 10 years, ISO standards are responsible for reviewing the requirements of the standards to reflect the changing economies, changing world. The last time ISO 9001 was reviewed was back in 2008, so it was due a change. And 14001, the last time it was updated, was in 2004. So the reason for the changes is to reflect current globalization, international markets, supplier outsourcing, and just to meet the current business needs. So how are you going to manage the transition to the new standards? Well, the international organisation, as I said before, reviews it every 7 years. It's been published in September 2015, and you've got 3 years to transition to the new standard. So the deadline is September 2018 for anyone to transition from 2008 to 2015, and then ISO 14001, 2004 to 2015 respectively. Here's a very brief history of ISO 9001. It came about in 1987, and it's incurred 5 changes now to date, and we're in the 5th edition. The year 2000 was a very minor change, 2008 was a fundamental change, and 2015 sees major changes brought to the standard in terms of its structure, risk management requirements, and also leaving documentation open to the client to decide which sort of documentation he or she would like. Driving it, over the last 10 years it became obvious that there was lack of risk management practices being adopted by companies to reflect cloud computing, hence documented information is now the terminology used throughout the standard. The ISO Standards Committee would like companies now to consider and incorporate strategic thinking into their quality management systems, and it's also trying to adopt a more formalised process approach to companies when they're implementing systems, and they also want the senior management team to take more of a leadership approach to managing their system. So the key changes for anyone here that's familiar with it, leadership have to show and will be interviewed by an ISO auditor if it's with the NSCI, EQA or Certification Europe respectively. So leadership will be a key requirement. They'll have to exemplify to an auditor that they understand the requirements of ISO, and also that they've taken active lead in terms of their strategy, their objectives, their risk management, and looking at any business opportunities that may come their way and reflecting that in the system. Then we have risk. So they want an effective risk management process in place, and for a business organisation to actually assess their risks and opportunities, and that can be easily done through a SWOT or a PESTEL analysis, and also you could transfer over your health and safety risk matrix into your business risks to identify them, hence the interrelation. The context of the organisation now, a business needs to look at interested parties, and interested parties would be stakeholders, employees, clients, suppliers, and also anyone who's interested in your business, they have to be defined and the requirements are going to have to be specified. Then we have Annex SL. So Annex SL is the biggest change to the standard. It gives a formatted structure now to ISO 9001, and it's like the cobbler's son going around with holes in his shoes. ISO had no standard for its own standards, so it never had a specific management system format. So now that's after changing, where all ISO standards have to have the Annex SL structure, which is a high-level structure. 10 chapters, and chapter 7 and 8 respectively are going to be specific discipline to the ISO standard. And this is why you can have integration seamless integration in the 3 standards, because the 3 standards will have an Annex SL structure. So this is the comparison between the old and the new. So you can see the 2008 had clause 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, and now it has clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And they're all the brand new requirements, which means a complete new upgrade for all existing systems. And as I said, you have over 2 years now, 2.5 years to get it integrated by September 2018. The ISO 14001, which again is a pillar of sustainability. The key drivers of the change here is that the senior management team have to make sure that environmental and sustainability initiatives are key and strategic to their operation, especially in the construction industry, trying to get more sustainable products like EcoSem green cement, looking at actually using more environmentally friendly products, looking at the HVAC and so forth. So environmental importance should be the cornerstone of every business. Then we come along to leadership. So there's a greater emphasis for senior managers to be involved in the strategic alignment of the environmental management system. And again, risks is the same as the ISO 9001. You would have to assess your environmental risks. So when you're on a construction site, we'd have to do an environmental management plan. We would also need to make sure that all of your environmental aspects are managed and appropriate control measures in line with all environmental legislation are being followed through, and that we should try and reduce and reuse the waste as much as possible. The context of the organisation, again, you'd need to look at the interested parties. That could be residents, social neighbours, it could be the government, it could be the residential party or landlords. And then Annex SL, exactly the same as the ISO 9001, is the structure of the ISO standards, which is applicable, as I said, to all standards. The ISO standard now requires life cycle perspective, and this is where an organisation will be required to look at every single one of their products and services from cradle to grave to make sure it's environmentally friendly as much as possible. Suppliers and outsourcing. A lot of contractors now are outsourcing a lot of their trade to outsourced contractors. Now we have to bring them back in to make sure that they are equally environmentally friendly and are in tune with the strategic environmental direction of the business to make sure that environmental best practices are constantly applied on the site. Environmental performance is key, so we'll now have to monitor, measure and analyse our environmental performance on an ongoing basis. And scope and applicability, you will have to be very specific now about your scope, and that would be applicable to all construction sites or activities that you would engage in. Documented information, this is to reflect the current information age that we're in and cloud computing. There's now no real requirement for Word documents, everything can be electronic. You can see today a lot of, you've got health and safety management system providers that are in the software solutions, so that's just to reflect the current operating environment, to say that we can get away with, we can actually do away with Word and Excel documents and use everything up in the cloud. So what you need to do to implement ISO 9001, you need to monitor the ISO 9001, 14001, 2015 revisions LinkedIn page. So if any of you are interested, there is a LinkedIn page that we currently manage. Purchase the new standards from the National Standards Authority of Ireland. You need to set up a project team, identify organisational gaps which need to be addressed to meet the new requirements, develop an implementation plan to implement the new requirements of the ISO standards, on leadership, risk management, the context of the organisation and so forth. And then what you need to do is review all of your documentation and update your documentation, carry out training, internal audits, and contact your certification body to ask for their transition policy, with the deadline being September 2018, which means that you should set a time frame to have all of your implementation done by May 2018 to ensure that you meet the cut-off times. Thank you very much.